Easy now everybody. I got my hands on the new Aqua One Arc here, look. It's like their version of the Fluval Flex. My words, not theirs. Either way, I'm really excited about this. This is the Arc and the Flex face to face. The Arc is on the left, the Flex on the right. The 34 litre Flex it is. It looks like the curve at the bottom is about the same from this angle. Side by side though, we can see that the Flex does come in a wee bit more at the bottom. The angles at the top look about the same, although this is the smaller of the two original Flexes, and this Arc is 46 litres, which comes out at about 12 gallons and stretches more towards the top. A quick look at the pump that comes with it, which is rated at 100 litres per hour. Fine for an aquarium this size. It's really easy to put together. Basically, the intake pipe sits underneath the motor, and then you've got another pipe which reaches up and pokes through the false back through a wee hole. Once you poke it through, you can add the directional nozzle, which is the piece in my left hand. Point that in any direction you want. Then there's a suction cup with a clip that goes on the intake pipe to hold it steady. This is where it goes. There's still ample room for a 50 or 75 watt heater, which is what you're going to need. And there's bags of room in this rear tank filtration section. It's designed like an internal sump system, so you've got these dividers here, and what they do is ensure the water has to flow through each area and come into contact with all the media within it. I like that lots. I think it's a really clever design. What I'm not as keen on is the first stage, which is these cartridges that you have to replace routinely. You've got this floss, and then on the back of that there's carbon, which I've said several times. It's only useful in certain circumstances if you set up a tank the way I do. Well, unless you're willing to replace the cartridges every month, which is efficient but not necessarily cost effective, and then you've got a cartridge of biomedia. So essentially the water's going to flow through the fine floss first, then the carbon, then the biomedia provided, then through all the other media that you're going to add, and finally the sponge. Doesn't make sense in terms of workflow. I've still got a full box of this Fluval Biomax that was left over from a previous project. Turned out I'd bought more than I needed, so I'm going to fill this media bag full of it. To ensure it doesn't all spill out, I've got one of these handy wee clips to use, and I'll show you why that's going to be good for us in a sec. We're going to close it off by pushing the end of the bag through the loop, and then push the stopper all the way down over the loop. We're going to grab ourselves some fishing line and tie that on nice and tight. The plan is to be able to retrieve our bag should we want to, without having to get our hand right down into the back of the filter. Or the filter compartment rather, sorry. With that tied on, we can lower it all the way to the bottom. Then we tie the other end of our fishing line to a suction cup. And with any luck we can stick that on the back of the tank. Embarrassingly, I think I've used an old suction cup. It's not going to stick, but you get the idea. In fact, even with it just hanging there, we can find it with our hand easily and pull the bag out when we want. We'll just snip that to tidy it up. Then I've cut several grades of filter foam, and that's what I'm going to replace the cartridges with. These things will last forever. All you need to do is squeeze them out every now and then in some tank water. To me, that's better than buying new cartridges every month or so when they go done. I would have preferred it if this coarser sponge was over this side. It would make it one of the first points of contact, grabbing some of the larger particles first. That would allow to have some finer sponge media in this section, ideally with our Biomax or our ceramic rings underneath it. It would ensure the sponges catch most of the waste before it hits the biomedia, clogging it up. We're probably going to need to rinse the ceramic rings a lot more regularly because of where they are. Could have used filter floss in there to really polish the water, but I don't know if that would affect the flow rate and make the motor work too hard once it starts getting clogged up. Fits perfect in there though, so we're going to leave it where it is. I'm actually thinking about filling this with some stuff that shrimp might like and adding a wee family of shrimp so they can help clean up. Because that's plenty of filtration for a 12-gallon tank already. So now we'll get a look at the light. Continues with the arc theme, the shape of it, and looks quite classy. I quite like this, I have to say. Wow, it's bright. It comprises of 42 lights, including green, blue and red. Looks like they're going to do a stand-up job. How do I press this here? There's no switches on it. How do I turn this? No, it's got to be the power button. There we go. Oh wait, that's a touch sensitive switch. That's brilliant. I love that. Nice wee feature. Definitely going to be hitting that a few times just for the thrill of it. It's simple to seat it. We just hook the cradle over the back and then tighten the screws to secure it in place. Not overly tight, just in case it could snap the glass. And then we've got that flexible arm to get it in a position we want. To fit the lid, they give you 4 of these plastic brackets, 2 for each side. They in turn hook onto the left and right panels. Simple but effective. It's not loose, it doesn't rattle about or anything like that. I am a fan of glass lids, but I do have a comment to make later on in the video about this. It does leave you plenty of a gap at the back though to get your wires through. That may even be where I put my air tube through with an air stone at the bottom for my aeration. But that's a quick look there how much space is afforded for the filtration. And the tank still looks huge to me. Feels like they've put loads of time into the design for that. So we would normally need to cycle the aquarium, but I'm going to cheat and cannibalise this wee box filter that I've had running on another tank for, well, forever. I'm going to slip these in between the sponges I cut for the first stage filtration, the blue, green and black ones. If you remember, you can wind it back if not. And that should mean it's instantly cycled there. Eventually, when the rest of the media is cycled, I can take them back out, put them back in my box filter and I've got another spare filter to use again, or on another tank. Then we can start filling it up and scaping it. Look at my hand there. I said this tank looks huge and it does. My hand looks tiny in there. I always like to begin with this clay-based substrate at the bottom underneath the gravel to give the rooted plants something to start feeding on. I like to push it away from the front of the tank because otherwise you can sometimes see a wee layer underneath the gravel and we don't want that. So then we can start spreading our gravel on top of it. We can add our plants. And of course, I can't find my planting tongs anywhere. And our hardscape. I found a really nice piece of rosewood. This is it here. So I'm going to glue some Java moss to the top of it. And as it grows, I'm going to trim it so it spreads. And hopefully, it's going to end up looking a bit like a tree. That's the plan anyway. I mentioned the lid before, which has this nice wee cut out to pop your food in. But if you want to get in the tank to do some maintenance or whatever, you've got to lift the whole thing off. On the Aqua One cubes though, the lid comes in 2 sections. You can place a smaller bit at the front or the back as you wish, but it makes access a lot easier. They sit on rims each side of the tank, which I don't feel are too obtrusive, and I really like that setup, so kinda wish they carried that over to the Arc if I'm honest with you. Even if they kept the wee brackets so you didn't have a ledge running the full length. I mean, I'm not calling it a deal breaker, but I did prefer it when you could remove a section to get in there. The other thing I said earlier was about the concave of the glass. With the Arc, I feel like I can view it from above and everything's clear. I need a higher viewing angle because these tanks sit underneath a big long 6-foot tank. With the Flex, I kind of feel like it distorts a wee bit at the bottom section. I concede that's not a problem for everybody, but I did notice it when I was taking photographs as well and filming a couple of times. So this is our Arc, and I've got to say I love it. The bubbles on the side can happen the first time you fill a tank, they'll go away in no time. But I'm loving the huge viewing pane. It stands 40 centimetres tall and the footprint is 40 by 30 front to back, but then you have to add another 5 centimetres for the bow on the front. I'm loving all the components and I appreciate the way the filtration is concealed at the back, especially with the changes that I made. I can see myself spending a lot of time sitting in front of this tank. I love that the lid is glass. I think it somehow helps to make it look bigger when you're viewing it. I just love everything. I'm really impressed with this aquarium. I'm a big fan of the flexes, but I think that the tweaks to the curved theme that Aqua One have made have resulted in a tank at least as good as its Fluval cousins.